Okay, welcome to our course Fundamentals of Game Design and Gameplay. We're discussing incorporating stories and narratives into your game. There are 7 videos on this before this one, so you have to watch all of them to understand this better. Now we are discussing emotional limits of interactive stories. By interactive stories we refer to the game stories. Those are interactive. So what are their emotional limits? When the game does not have any story, they do not arouse complex emotions. The players just enjoy some simple emotions, just like thrill of victory, agony of defeat, frustration of repeated failure. But if you incorporate a story, you can create characters in the game that the players will care about, and then the player will be able to identify themselves with the characters, and they may form with subtle relationships among those characters, and the players may experience rich emotional feelings, just like betrayal of a lover, satisfaction at justice done, protective instinct for a child. Now in case of non-linear stories, I think, as you know, that non-linear stories, they can branch and the story can change, and they will have multiple ending point. But if it's a true non-linear story, they may not always lead to some emotionally fulfilling endings of the game, may not always lead to most powerful emotional experience, because it also depends on the players' actions, and the story in its nature may not have multiple emotional ending point. So non-linear stories, sometimes you have to restrict the ending to a single or multiple emotionally meaningful endings. Maybe you have to branch through the player through different plots to reach to the same, or maybe one or two or couple of emotionally meaningful endings. You have to link those plots, game plots, to go to that particular emotionally meaningful endings. It may not be always easy. You have to think about the game story and the interaction, everything. I think it can get pretty complex. Anyway, what about the emotional limits of avatar based games? I think in some simple games they are not emotionally fulfilling. Just, if you can see, if the avatar dies, you can reload the game and you can start it. But I think many stories that ultimately is avatar based, but there are many other characters, I think the avatar can create some sort of emotional richness. I think it will depend on the type of story, but if it is the single player avatar based action games, I think the avatar's death, it will not arouse any rich emotional feelings. So if you want to affect the player's feelings with the death of a character, your game can kill a side character, maybe the avatar's friend, or maybe in party based game one of the important characters or any character. Avatar friends, I think in the Planetfall game the sidekick dies. In Final Fantasy VII the player Sally dies. In party based games you are more free to kill off the members, because you can carry the stories forward with the help of other characters. I think Alice, this is the characteristics of the Alice character. Before proceeding further, maybe a little bit of advertisement. Just etc.net, software development, web development, and the corresponding consulting services. mall.justetc.org, electronics products sell, jobs.justetc.net, recruitment, computer.justetc.net, short notes and training videos on IT and software development, university.justetc.org, online and offline training. Okay, now we will introduce the concept scripted conversations and dialogue trees. What is a scripted conversation? I think it is the conversation that the avatar character, that the player character takes with the non-player character. It allows the player to engage in conversations with the non-player characters. I think it can be part of the storytelling. Through this conversation, you may want to propagate your story to the player. Also, this conversation can also affect your game. If you are designing a non-linear game, then maybe through this conversation you can also branch your game story into different directions. And when you will be introducing this scripted conversation into your game, I think the game will go into special mode, because when the scripted conversation will take place, all other activities in the game will be unavailable. And as a player, you have to choose a line of dialogue, and then the non-player character will select another dialogue. Okay, maybe when you select the dialogue, you can also select your emotion. You are happy, angry, or whatever. Maybe the dialogue and the emotion that will affect how the other player reacts, non-player character reacts. Okay, structure of a dialogue tree. The dialogue tree, I think it's sort of data structure that will keep track of all of the dialogues between you and the non-player character, some sort of, and it can also include the different emotions associated with different dialogues. As a designer, you should provide the dialogue tree as well. I think when you'll be writing your designing document, you also need to show the dialogue tree to the developers, so that they have some sense of what the conversation will be, what are the contents of the dialogues, or something like that. Okay, design issues for dialogue trees. You can implement dialogue trees in two different ways. You can think as a developer or as a designer. As a designer, you can also give dialogue trees as a conditional branches and exchanges, or you can give flexible list of options. In conditional branches and exchanges, you can show multiple menus of dialogues. Each menu will contain a set of dialogues that the player can say and a set of dialogue that the non-player character can say. Based on this, what the non-player characters say, this will branch to a different menu including character and non-player character dialogues. And the next conversation will be limited within that dialogues, and within the dialogues, and based on the dialogues, the flow of the game will go to another menu. So this is the way it will forward, and I think as a designer you should provide this dialogue, and as a programmer you should implement it as a menu based. In flexible list of options, I think you can, the dialogues, they will not be kept in menus, but it will be some sort of many different dialogues, and maybe them some kind of branching from one dialogue to another dialogue, different set of options, and they will roam around from one to another based on the dialogue selection. So what are the benefits of scripted conversations? It produces a sequence of plausible remarks and replies. It can help to illustrate the personality of the avatar and the non-player character. I think in Phrase Monkey Island games, through the conversation we can understand that the character Guybrush is a wise guy. It's a real part of the story. Sometimes the story, it involves conversation with the non-player character. So in the games you also have to involve it, but remember the balancing of gameplay and narratives. The player choice can have effect on the story as well. In the non-linear story, the conversation, based on what you reveal, what the other non-player character reveal, the actions will get affected and the story can move to a different direction.